I still remember what I was thinking the first time I read a research article back in my first year of university. How is anyone supposed to read this? Hello everyone, my name is Nick and I'm a physician. In my first year of training in neurology here in Hong Kong, I've also recently started my part-time career as a scientist, and so this is my channel, hoping to share with you my journey and anything that I've learned along the way. When we first begin to read research articles, it's very easy to just jump straight in, start reading the article word by word from the start to the finish. Of course, we always start enthusiastically, with a high energy level hitting the introduction, and then the abstract, bam, 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 and then we start facing these strange words like single nucleotide polymorphism, spatial transcriptomics, extended gene expression, dual specificity phosphatase that can phosphorylate both phospholipids and phosphoproteins. And then the energy starts to come down when we find ourselves reading the same sentences again and again without knowing what we're actually understanding. And this happens throughout the entire paper. It takes so much effort. And when we finally come to the conclusion, we realize that we sort of understand every word that we've been seeing with our eyes, but our brains just cannot process what we've just been reading for the past half an hour. Therefore, having just kickstarted this part-time career as a scientist, I think it's important to start with the simple question: what is a research paper? So in this video, I'm going to break down the making of a typical research article, the 7 pillars that almost every single research article follows. I think this would really pull us out back from the word-by-word rabbit hole, if you will, help us to take a step back and look at research paper from a bird's eye view, what it is and what it's trying to do and how it achieves its function. Now, to begin, a research article is a terminology to describe the written format that scientists use to communicate with each other in a formal manner. And as obsessive as we are with standardizing control groups with experimental groups, we are also very obsessive with standardizing the way we communicate through research articles. This is why every single research article can be broken down into 7 pillars, a formula that's followed by each and every scientist when they try to publish papers in research journals, so that each journal can be cross-compared against each other. Now, the 7 parts are the title, the authors, abstract, the introduction, the results, the discussion, and the methods. And I'll break down each of those 7 pillars one by one using an example of this paper. Here we see a paper from the journal called Alzheimer's and Dementia. And the first part will be the title of the journal itself. This is a 1-sentence summary overview of the entire journal article. It's probably the most important sentence in the entire 20-page, 30-page, or 50-page research article. And I don't mean this sarcastically, because what I realize is that I myself spend quite a minute amount of time understanding what the title is trying to convey. But in fact, this is the essence of the entire communication that the authors are trying to convey. So it's important to bear in mind the title of the research paper as we proceed on to our subsequent reading. The second part will be the authors. This might seem to be unimportant at this phase, as I'm just starting out my career path as a researcher, but I think going down the road when I'm finally finding my interest area and also the research question that I'm trying to answer, I think this would really help me find my own community and people that I could hopefully collaborate with in the future, because these are the people who are interested in the same topic and are asking the same questions that I am. Third part would be the abstract. This would be an expansion of the title. So if I could give you an analogy, the title would sort of be like Google Maps zooming out on the city of Hong Kong, and the abstract would be a step zoomed in on one of the districts within the city. This would further elaborate on the background of research, the methods that the authors have used, and the results, as well as the conclusions from the experiments. It is usually around 200 to 300 words long. Because of its encompassing nature, it is probably the second most important part following the title. If you would like to have a more detailed guide on how to break down abstract in 4 steps, I have a video linked here up in the corner where we discuss more about how to interpret the abstract for more efficient reading. The following will be the 4th part, which begins the body of the research, beginning with the introduction, or some of them they call it the background. This would serve as a summary of the research field surrounding the research question that the authors are trying to answer, providing the backstory of how the authors try to find a research gap in the existing knowledge bank to prove to the reader why the research question is an important one to answer. Focus more on this example. The background of this paper talks about what Alzheimer's disease is, what are the causes of Alzheimer's disease, one of the proposed mechanisms being dysregulation in the immune system, in which microglia is part of the immune system within the brain. The authors then try to link microglia and plaque formation, which is a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease, how these two components might come together to explain the phenomenon of Alzheimer's disease, but what is still not known that links up these two ideas. The 5th part will be the results. This is split into the step-by-step process whereby the authors come to their deduction and conclusion with each sequential step of experimentation. Here in this article, 2.1, the authors start with a molecular study examining the relationship between amyloid plaque deposition and the interaction with microglia. They then come to 2.2, where they transcribe the findings in their first experiment. The authors then move on to examine the genetic interplay in this process where microglia interacts with the plaques. And within these potentially explainable genetic networks, they extract the ones that are most promising in explaining the phenomenon. The 6th part would be discussion, where the authors would consolidate what they've learned from the experimentation, provide their interpretation of the results, and how this fits into the knowledge gap that they initially proposed in the introduction, how answers that they found in turn respond to the questions that they initially proposed. Usually in this part, they would also include a section called limitation, where they reflect on what they have done in experimentations, what might be some drawbacks, what might be some bias that they have, how they could improve the experiments down the road, and how other researchers could use this knowledge that they've gained in a more objective manner. Last but not least, in the 7th pillar would be the methods. This is where the authors would describe their experiments step by step in detail, and the purpose of this is so that anyone who would like to replicate their exact experiments to see whether they would get similar results to validate their conclusion, they can do so according to the steps provided in the methods section. Some would have this formally within the article, while some would have a link to the supplementation information. And although traditionally we say that these are the 7 pillars of a research paper, I think I have a bonus part for you, which is, and we gotta wait for it, it is the figures. And yes, this is another very skimmed over part of any research paper, because these figures are actually a visual summary of what authors are trying to convey. As the cliche goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in research papers it is certainly the case. There is a limited number of figures allowed in any one research paper, 3 to 4 figures. Many authors would try to distill what they've learned through their experiments, the gist, and to pack the knowledge that they would like to highlight into these figures. That's it. Those are the 7 pillars that formulate the structure of any research paper that you would encounter in your lifetime, I would say, unless something drastic happens, like the next ice age. Now that we understand the structure of a research paper, we can then really begin to build a strategy to help us understand and grasp the key concepts within these texts. As I've just mentioned, the title, the abstract, and the figures. These would form the basis in reading scientific journals efficiently. And if you're interested in diving deeper into how we break down the abstract in 4 simple steps, click the link in the corner. And until next time, keep on reading.
Dual specificity phosphatase that can phosphorylate both phosphoproteins and phosphates. Dual specificity phosphatase that can phosphorylate both phospholipids and phosphoproteins.